A very good evening and welcome to another episode of South Africa Today and Beyond. In studio this evening, I'm joined by the Secretary General of the Congress of South African Students, Kulegani Skosana. Welcome to the show.
Good evening to you and your viewers. Thanks for having us.
Kulegani, for the benefit of our viewers that don't know what COSAS is, I think as one of the largest student organizations in South Africa and probably the African continent, maybe take us through the history of COSAS as a student organization. Where does it come from?
The Congress of South African Students was formed in 1979 in Velgespreid, Johannesburg, led first by its first president, Ephraim Mogale, with the goal to say that we need to redress the gains of the apartheid system, which had instilled a Bantu education mentality amongst young people, and there was pushing young people towards being slaves for the big industries which would have paid them peanuts, but not allowing them to venture into education such that they can be engineers and all sorts of exciting fields. So COSAS stood up to say that through the killing of Solomon Mahlangu, enough was enough. COSAS is spiked out of the June 76 uprising. In 1982, COSAS took a resolution of student worker action and adopted the Freedom Charter to say that we subscribe to the Freedom Charter. That is what we want for our country. We are a political organization which fights to liberate South Africa, in particular to transform the education sector such that every young person is bestowed the opportunity to become something of themselves and take their family out of poverty. So really COSAS is to say that every learner, every child in South Africa has a right to education, in particular free, fair, compulsory, dynamic education as stipulated in our preamble in the Constitution. So purely the Congress of South African Students exists to fight for the interests and aims of learners in basic education, which we refer to as pre-tertiary students, and to ensure that they receive their right to education, which is clearly stipulated in the South African Constitution.
I mean, in the early stages of COSAS, it had a black consciousness, I think, in terms of leaning, in terms ideologically. Are we seeing that kind of ideological posture within COSAS today, or has there been a shift in terms of the ideology of COSAS today?
We are more a nationalist organization, but like I've mentioned that we prove our existence, our alliance with a lot of organizations, and our fight for liberation of South Africa is through a document called the Freedom Charter. We think that if the Freedom Charter is implemented entirely, then we would be moving towards a national democratic revolution, the fulfillment of the national democratic revolution, of which we are visioning that revolution where every learner will not be walking kilometers to schools, but will be given transport. No child must have to go through class without food. There must be no child who does not have running water or who has to fetch water from the river. We are saying that young people must learn without fear, and it is through the implementation of the Freedom Charter that this ideal environment which we envisioned as the Congress of South African Students in 1979, to say that we want a learning environment where learners are an integral part of designing what works and what kind of education they would like to receive. And really, when we say we subscribe to the Freedom Charter, we are saying that the time for the education in South Africa that teaches us about Hitler, and it does not teach us about Steve Biko, it does not teach us about Solomon Mahlangu, but it teaches us about global history as compared to what we need to know, which is African history. Today in Africa, you find that we are fighting amongst each other as Africans. It's because we do not understand each other's cultures and we do not understand each other's history. And that is why we are stressing the importance of transforming education And part of the things mentioned in the Freedom Charter, which we subscribe to, is that education must be a free provision from basic education up until first year undergraduate. And we're saying not only that, but we are strong. We are a strong organization which insists that every young person must join in the fight to intensify the end of poverty and carnage against the resources of our beautiful country. And it is through the Freedom Charter that as a young people, we will get back the resources of the country, we will get back the land. And that is why in 1982 we took that resolution to say that we support student worker action. Our parents go to work so that they can put food on the table, so that we can go to school. Absolutely. And instead, in return, we go to school so that we can one day work and provide for our families. So there is a synergical relationship between workers and students. And therefore, we are saying that when you retrench our parents, you are refusing us an opportunity to go to school, because they cannot buy clothes, they cannot buy uniform, they cannot buy stationery and so on. And that is why even today we are with the workers of South Africa who want better wages. Absolutely. As the Congress of South African Students, we do not welcome the 3,500 rand minimum wage. We are saying that our parents deserve better. It is supposed to be at the level which is appropriate and which would enable them to support us as their children.
Now, Kulekani, I mean, you talk about a lot of relations between workers, but also, again, I mean, between various organizations and as well, and what the posture out to be in the African continent in terms of, I think, the curriculum content as well. But I mean, looking at the formation of COSAS in 1979, it really is what as sort of the peak of the isolation campaigns against South Africa, which also meant that there was a lot of international solidarity that happened. But insofar as partnerships and organizations that COSAS works with on the African continent in particular, in terms of also forming sort of a single coordinated idea in terms of what out to be the posture of basic education, not only in South Africa, but also in the African continent broadly is, what are some of the relations and relationships that you enjoy with some other organizations on the African continent?
Look, we as an organization are the biggest student organization in Africa. So it is more what organizations are affiliated with COSAS, because COSAS enjoys the support of 13 million learners who are going to go and become members of these said organizations. So any organization that exists, its members come from a high school at some point. That is why organizations affiliate themselves with the Congress of South African Students. We are a youth organization which is aligned to the African National Congress. We are a leftist youth organization, and our first president, by the way, is a former provincial secretary of the South African Communist Party, and our first female president was a member of the Young Communist League, as well as we've had presidents which have led in the African National Congress Youth League, as well as in a range of NGOs. We have leaders of COSAS who've found space in the BDS, also advancing an international solidarity struggle there, as well as women organizations. We are an organization with 4 pillars. It's international solidarity, mass mobilization, academic excellence, and as well as community work. So community organizations in their respective natures, which mobilize in the township, in villages, and in suburban areas where schools exist. Those are organizations which COSAS would affiliate themselves with. And any organization which subscribes to the Freedom Charter is an organization which is aligned with the Congress of South African Students. We are are a political organization, and we are supporters of the African National Congress. Apart from that, we collaborate with a lot of organizations to ensure that they also participate in fostering change within our schools and one of the pillars of the organization is community work. And before we are learners, before we are students, we are members of the community. And if there is an issue in the community, it means there is an issue for COSAS. And I would say in instances like in your Vuwani area, where schools have been closed and 27 schools have been burnt down, we are really shocked that post-democracy, 27 schools can burn down.
It is quite shocking.
This is something that even couldn't happen during the apartheid era. And we've been cautioning university students to say that when you destruct university property, be careful not to inculcate this culture into basic education. And we are seeing this trend happening now. We are saying that Nelson Mandela did not burn down his school. He did not burn down Fort Hare University, but he went there to acquire education. Similarly, in Vuwani, in Malamulele, in Kuruman, and in the Eastern Cape, where schools are being disrupted, we are saying that it is not in the interest of the community to ban or disrupt schools because whatever they are fighting for, the services, the roads, the development, it will not help us if the young people of those communities are not ready to receive that development.
Let me interrupt you there, Khulekani. I mean, we have to go for a quick ad break, but when we come back, I really want us to talk about the Vuwani situation and the intervention of government, but also the role that COSAS has played in terms of trying to assist and seeing that learners are back in classrooms. So let's go for a quick ad break and we'll take it from there after the ad break. Welcome back from the ad break, and in studio I'm still joined by the Secretary General of COSAS, Khulekani. And before the ad break, we're talking about, I mean, you started introducing the issue around the burning of infrastructure, particularly schools, especially the Vuwani situation. Maybe, I mean, the last Monday, I mean, what we're gathering from the news is that, you know, people are back in classrooms, learners are back in classrooms, and the situation is that a government is attempting to normalize the situation there. But maybe take us through, I know you guys have been at the center of the issue as COSAS and also trying to assist in the situation there. What has been the intervention of COSAS in the Vuwani situation?
The intervention of COSAS has been simple. We've been garnering a message to parents. I mean, if you are a human being and you have a child and you have sanity, you must understand that you can never be allowed, even by God, to use your child as a bargaining tool for whatever disagreements you have in the community. We cannot be using children to fight or to advance our differences. We are saying that leave young people to go to class and learn so that they do not lose their lives into crime, lose their lives into illiteracy and unemployment and drugs and so on. We are saying the community must allow young people of Vuwani and in particular Limpopo villages to go to class. And we've been saying to learners, you would note that the people who are currently incarcerated or convicted for having had banned schools in Vuwani, those are young people below the age of 23, by the way. Their fight had nothing to do with the municipality, but they were given alcohol and put in a kumbi and told to ban schools. At the end of the day, when schools burn down, the victims are young people. The people who must be arrested for burning those schools is young people, and the people who are victims because there's no school at all, it's the learners who are young people. So we are saying that the old people have had a chance to go to school. They must allow us to go to class. And that's a message we're pushing in Vuwani. And what a decision that we would not like to find ourselves come to take, but we are prepared to take. And we have communicated this even to the president of the country, that if needs be so, we will take thousands of our combatants and battalions to go and physically protect those schools because the police are unavailable to do so. The community of Vuwani is unavailable to do so. Everybody is pointing fingers saying we've not banned schools, but every time we wake up, schools are disrupted and learners are not allowed to go to class. So if we must go and do the duty of the South African police by physically protecting those premises, those assets of South Africa and the assets of our future, we will do so. And we want to make everyone understand that as learners, as young people in South Africa, we are the majority group in terms of the population categories of age in South Africa. So if democracy works, then it must work in our interest because we want education. We want free education and we don't want any disrupting of learning and teaching. And we are saying that we are watching the people of Vuwani. Vuwani does not belong to them. It belongs to the people of South Africa. And as South Africans, we will protect the constitution of the country when it speaks about the right of every child to safety, about the right to every child to have access to education without any risk of danger coming from members of the community. We're disappointed that the police, till today, there's no ATM that has been bombed or disrupted or fiddled with. There's no clinic or hospital or municipality office that is being closed down. But the poor young people who cannot defend themselves, who are not yet of a correct age, who are still minors, who don't get salaries, whose even child support grant does not even come directly to them, goes to their parent. Today, they are victims and they are being deprived of education, an education which people died for in South Africa. We know history will tell us that there are people who died so that we today can have the ability to walk in and out of school. And we are saying the generation of 1976 is being spitted on if we are disrupting and closing schools.
And I mean, the approach that COSAS wants to take, to physically protect, I think, the school premises also speaks to your Learn Without Fear campaign, the ability of I think, learners to access schools and be able to walk to school and learn in a safe environment, number one. But also, I mean, the learning environment itself, issues around, corporal punishment as well, access to, feeding schemes in schools, for example, nutritious food in schools, not just food because simply food is there, nutritious and healthy meals as well. But maybe explain to our viewers what the Learn Without Fear campaign is about.
The Learn Without Fear campaign says that we must not use fear and think that it is an appropriate tool to teach children. As a learner and as a child, you need not fear your parent or your teacher. You need to respect them. And we are saying that we don't fear our principals and teachers, we respect them. And that is the culture we want teachers also to inculcate in the classroom. But also it speaks to the fact that in villages and rural areas, as well as your townships, learners, when they go to school, they still have to work in groups because of fears of muggings. When you go to do afternoon classes, you must hide your cell phone in your sock because you fear that it will be taken from you. And as well as bullying. Bullying still prevails in the school premises. And in black or rather township village schools, you find that this is something that is not recognized as a challenge. And teachers are not even trained to deal with bullying. In some instances, teachers themselves are responsible for orchestrating bullying, calling children, using psychological tormentation, calling children monkeys, and calling children stupid. That is bullying that is prevailing. And we are saying that when you are a learner, you should be able to enter in the school premises without the fear of a drug peddler forcing you to sell drugs in the school, without the fear of a gangsterism, forcing you to be a member, without gangs forcefully initiating young children at the age of 14 without their own consent. We know that drug peddlers distribute and forcefully make young people take drugs, and they then obviously force them to sell those drugs. And we are saying it is because there are no proper reporting channels for learners to discreetly report the people who are doing wrong things in the school premises. And our message is simple: teachers must stop smoking in school premises, because teachers are our role models. When you see your role model smoke, you will also think it's a good thing. If they want to smoke, they must leave the school. A school is a center for educating young people that smoking is bad. And we are saying that a school is a weapon-free and gun-free zone. And anybody who enters those premises with weapons must be arrested. Our Learn Without Fear campaign says that when you go to a department of education or a municipal office, even home affairs, you will find, even a hospital, a clinic, you will find a metal detector there. But we're asking ourselves, why are those resources not distributed in schools when the state has declared education as the first priority of government? We expect them to protect the number one assets of any community, of which it is a school. A simple school, a basic school, even a dilapidated school, is fairly worth more than 1.5 million. We don't understand how you do not put security to guard those facilities. Our tables and chairs, our windows and our doors are being stolen and being removed from school premises because there's no security. And we're going backwards because we're wasting taxpayers' money by putting 3 million worth of assets in the community and failing to pay a security guard 5,000 rand to protect those facilities. We are saying that Learn Without Fear means that there must be proper fencing around the school. There must be surveillance cameras in the school to make sure that learners are not doing wrong things. They are not using drugs. They are not bullying each other, and they are not abusing the resources of the school. They are not, people and members of the community are respecting those facilities. Learners and teachers are not the only people who use learning learning institutions. Schools are used for churches. Schools are used for voting. Schools are used for political meetings and community meetings. We are saying that we are not the only people who have the responsibility to respect and protect schools. We are saying that the community must make sure that at night nobody goes into our schools and steals laptops and steals a range of assets which are meant to advance education in the community. We have an equal responsibility to make sure that schools and learners are a safe environment. And we are saying that the government must roll out sniffer dogs to make sure that they smell learners when they walk to school, as well as teachers, that no member of the school brings in drugs. And that will only happen if the government is efficient in making sure that a school is a safe learning environment.
Very quickly, Kulekani, as we draw to a conclusion, what has been the response? And I'm assuming that you've engaged SADTU as one of the biggest stakeholders, I think, where basic education is concerned. And some of the issues that you're highlighting would demand that, SADTU as one of the biggest stakeholders then comes to the party for this Learn Without Fear campaign. What has been the response of SADTU? Very quickly, as we draw to a close, Kulekani.
SADTU has adopted the Learn Without Fear campaign in 2016 already, and members of SADTU, in particular teachers, have been strongly supporting our campaign, because it's not just about learners only, but it is about the safety of teachers. Teachers are also vulnerable, both from learners and as well other teachers and members of the community. We are saying that a teacher who is a parent, who loves children, must be able to teach in a safe environment. So we work very well with SADTU at the ground, at provinces and national level. They have adopted our campaign.
That's good to know. Thank you so much, Kulekani. Unfortunately, I know you can go on for days about this issue, and it's something that COSA is quite passionate about, the Learn Without Fear campaign.
Yes.
But thank you so much for coming onto the show. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have this evening, but thank you so much for coming through.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Sure. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for you this evening on the show. Join us again next week for another episode of South Africa Today and Beyond. Have a good evening.